Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Caitlin Dutton, the Director of Family Engagement here at Barnard. Thank you for joining us today for our third session for our incoming students and their parents, family members, and other supporters as we look forward to move in the start of the semester. During these conversations, we will share what to expect as students navigate the transition to Barnard and embark on their first semester, as well as how families can best support their students now and throughout their time at the college. We aim to answer your questions and to help you feel more prepared and knowledgeable before stepping foot on campus. During today's session, we'll be discussing academic experience and support. So the academic experience at Barnard and the many support and advising resources that are in place to help students succeed. Throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A function to submit your questions, and we'll be sure to save time to answer them at the end. To get it started, I'll now pass it over to our first speaker, Holly Tedder, Dean for Academic Planning and Class Advising.
Thank you, Caitlin, and it's a pleasure to be with everyone for this webinar. I'm Holly Tedder. I'm the Dean for Academic Planning and Class Advising. And what I'm hoping that you'll take away from this entire presentation is just that the academic experience at Barnard, there are lots of different people who can serve as a resource for students throughout their academic experience. We're going to be talking about some of those people and the different areas that can support your journey or your student's journey while they're at Barnard. I'm talking specifically about the Dean's Office for Advising and Support this evening. And so that is a really good first point of contact resource for you or for your student if they have any academic questions or concerns. And so just to give you an overview of who we are, that's myself, the class deans. Every student at Barnard has a dean who has been assigned to their specific class year. So if you're an incoming first year student, then you have a first year class dean. If you are an incoming transfer student, then you have not only the associate dean for transfer students who's also the sophomore class dean, but if you are an incoming transfer junior, then you also have a junior class dean. Our college case manager and leaves and returns coordinator, our program coordinator and academic coach, and we have a group of administrative assistants as well. And so the work that we do really is about establishing one-to-one personal connections with students, helping them with their academic success, their personal development, their mental and physical well-being. And so we really try to help students understand what their options are, both from like an academic standpoint and also what that looks like for non-academic support resources at the college. We help students develop their educational goals, complete their graduation requirements, figure out how best to collaborate with their faculty, whether that is the instructors of their courses or their pre-major or major advisors, and work with other offices on campus to help promote their success. So a couple of reasons why a student might meet with their class dean. And when we say the dean's office, I think a lot of students think of that as similar to, say, like the principal's office at their high school. We really are not the principal's office. We really try to be a place where students can come to ask questions, to seek guidance, to get advice, and to find support. And so we really encourage students to come to us for any reason, and we can be their first point of contact. So a couple of scenarios in which someone might come to talk with their class dean is if they have an academic question or a concern, if they're trying to figure out what major they're trying to pursue, want to make sure that they understand the requirements for their degree, that they're on track to graduate. Sometimes students have personal challenges and they want to figure out how best to communicate with their professors about it. And we're happy to help consult on that. If they've already talked with their pre-major or their major advisor, but they feel like they need a more specific answer to a policy question and their advisor has routed them to their class dean, we can help. If they need academic support, like tutoring, if they're struggling to get things done, they need some time management support. If they're thinking about taking a leave of absence, or if they just have some kind of question and don't know where else to go, we are the point of contact and we can connect them to the right resource. So that's kind of an overview of why you might go to your class dean. We also have a number of um, academic support resources as well. So, one that is housed within the dean's office of for advising and support is peer tutoring. So that is students who might need support in a particular class. Um, we tend to offer peer tutoring in STEM courses, in language courses. For humanities courses, there is a writing center. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But this is usually either one-to-one or small group peer tutoring. It's a free service, and students are able to meet with a peer tutor throughout the semester. So if that's something that you or your student are interested in requesting, you can just email our office and email peer to peer@barnard.edu. We also offer academic coaching. What that looks like within the Dean's Office for Advising and Support is one-to-one support with any student who might be struggling to get things done or who wants to help bolster their academic skills. We do have a dedicated academic coach in our office, and we have a group of peer coaches as well. So typically, the way the process works is that students will meet with our academic coach for a consultation and to discuss a match with a peer academic coach. And then those peer coaches will work with students on a regular basis, usually once a week for 30 minutes, to kind of talk through what they have coming up and take a look at their syllabi, figure out how to manage their time effectively, think about study strategies and skills, and really just promote academic skill building so that the students, at Barnard are really, really strong academically, and this is just a way to take those academic skills to the next level. So that's a little bit about the dean's office. I'm going to be around later for questions if you have them. But for now, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Wendy Garay, who is our first year class dean.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I'm always grateful for the opportunity to chat with our families and our students and to share how we're able to support students in the dean's office, but also during their first year. Um, and just so that you have an idea, as Dean Setter said earlier, I'm Wendy Garay. I'm the first year dean at Barnard. I'm going into my 10th year at the college, so I've been around a little bit. And this is a busy time of year for us, but also an exciting time of year for us because we're getting ready to receive your students in person. I've met many of them over the summer and they've heard a lot about these resources. I'm hoping you have too in conversations with them, but just in case, I'm happy to review here. So at this point, the first year's class is pretty familiar with what we call our first year team, which includes me and my colleague, Lauren Guak, who is an assistant to the first year group, but also for seniors. And we also work with two continuing students, one who has been with us 2 years and one who joined us last year to assist class and offer support with a peer perspective to the first years. So we are a team of 4. Our team is pretty much available, business days, 9 to 5, and we are willing and able to chat about all the things academic, navigating the college, pointing them in the right direction, pointing them to the right person on campus. We understand that everything is quite new to them at this moment, and particularly during the first semester. And so with that in mind, we try to facilitate all of the resources on campus. So if they're ever in doubt, if they ever come to you and say, I don't know where to start with this question, or if you notice that they seem a little bit lost, do not hesitate, again, to send them to this team in particular, because this is one of our primary roles, is to help them navigate and to reassure them that even if we're not the people they're looking for, we can connect them to the folks that they do need. The insider covered some of the scenarios that, we might be able to help with. Again, depending on the time of year, I find that they shift, right? Right now, in this moment, there are a lot of questions about planning schedules and registration and things like that. But as we move into the year, it does become a little bit more about how to navigate conversations with faculty, or maybe they're struggling with time management or balancing things out with their classes. Maybe they're feeling overloaded. And those are all conversations we're happy to have with them. And me in particular, I meet with students one-on-one. I keep a public calendar. If there isn't room, we're very, very happy to fit them in. There's always room somewhere. But again, we do find that their concerns and their needs will shift throughout the first year, but we're prepared and happy to help with all of them. Another thing that the first year team does, and that I do, is we work very closely with faculty, particularly the pre-major advisors. So all of your students will be learning their pre-major advisors name toward the end of the month. That's when our faculty will join us back on campus and we'll be available to speak to them. But the pre-major advisors, and we'll talk about the advancing structure momentarily, will be one of the longer relationships your students will have on campus with a faculty member, because they're meant to stay with them until they declare. We also train our advisors in order to help them be able to advise across disciplines. And many of our pre-major advisors have been advising our first year students for a very long time. So they may not be in the exact department that your student is interested in, but they're able to advise across departments and certainly know our requirements inside and out. So let me go on to the next slide. Just really quickly, in case you'd like to know, or you'd like to let your student know how they can find us, I mentioned I keep a public calendar. So you can book me as that public calendar. They can find me by name and you can book me. They can, and my week calendar will come out and they can book an appointment right through there. If they're having trouble finding a time that's convenient, or just want to send, if they feel like sending a question in writing for a quick response, the first year Barnard account is the absolute fastest one because it has the most eyes on it. And then, of course, we do maintain a blog with information that's sort of timely to help them think about or focus in on things they should be thinking about at particular times of the year. So here are the advising contacts that I wanted to discuss that I referenced earlier. Coming up, so far in terms of advising, students had the opportunity to chat with me. They also had the opportunity to chat with faculty leading up to the week of registration. And they will have one more opportunity to speak with faculty that we refer to as orientation advisors. And just as it says on the slide, the orientation advisors are faculty members that can help, students sort of finesse their schedules. They already have some schedules, right? So they're finessing their schedules, tweaking their schedules, maybe contemplating some new choices because they're going to gain access to so many classes in August, many more than they had in July. So again, that's what the purpose of the orientation advisor, but there will be a handoff, right? And at the start of the school year, they will meet their pre-major advisor and they will stay with that advisor until they declare their major. Now, students at Barnard generally declare majors in the second semester of sophomore year. If for some reason they declared a little earlier, then the handoff would happen then. But generally speaking is in the sophomore year, the students go from pre-major advisor to their major advisor. I'm listed here because I'm sort of the constant during the first year. And again, every year our students are at Barnard, they have a class dean that's always there, regardless of whether they have a pre-major advisor or major advisor. They always have a class dean that they can count on for assistance. In addition to these advisors, if we have students that are interested in pre-professional careers, med school, law school, graduate programs, things like that, there are dedicated advisors for this as well. They're not housed in the dean's office. They're housed in a center we refer to as Beyond Barnard, but we certainly can facilitate those connections. So for example, we have a pre-health advisor, pre-law advisor, those kinds of things. Someone who's interested in business school, graduate school, things like that would be able to get advice through Beyond Barnard. And then I think Dean Tedder mentioned this briefly in her slides, but we also have additional peer advisors, which I've listed here. We have writing and speaking fellows that help with humanities courses. We have science fellows to help with scientific writing in our STEM courses. And then we have the peer tutors that largely assist with STEM and foreign language available to students. Now, I always like to do a plug for this particular group on campus. There are many clubs and organizations between Barnard and Columbia, but Lift Up is one that is housed in the dean's office and has been around. I think this may be their 4th year now. It grew out of a student's needs and interest in helping her peers. She felt she had trouble finding her community in her earlier years at Barnard, and she wanted to help students find community and facilitate the process because she found it quite difficult. And so this started as a first-year initiative. It was a group that would come together maybe 6 weeks into the semester to help students that maybe didn't find an immediate group of friends during orientation or during the start of classes, connect with other students that might be feeling the same way or feeling a little homesick or looking for, again, to build community. And it was quite popular, and now it is something that's available to transfer students and really available to any student across any year. But it continues to be really popular with first years, and understandably so. This group has already been in touch with our first years, and we'll be having some welcome sessions with them. Might be this week, it might be next week. But this is happening and they've received this information. And so I mention it to you, to our families, just to keep in mind, something you might want to remind of your student if any of them should mention that they're having any kind of difficulty, sort of finding a friend group. They meet weekly, they plan outings, they talk about things that are in the moment, sort of what their struggles are in those moments. They have dinners together and those sorts of things. So it's a very successful, again, student-led group that we're very happy to support in the dean's office. And with that, I think I'll pause here. Again, I will also be around for questions at the end, but I will pass it on to my colleague, Dean Mary Larita.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm a little blurry. See, there we go. I'm happy to be here. It's great to be able to talk with families. And just so you know, I'm the Associate Dean for Transfer Students and also the Sophomore Class Dean. I've been working with transfer students for a long time here at Barnard and at other institutions. And I was a transfer student myself 3 times as an undergrad. So I really do really enjoy working with this population. And to start off, the transfer student transition is a little bit different from someone who's coming in as a first-year student who's never been to college, obviously. And so we work with transfer students a little bit differently. Advising, of course, transfer students do get pre-major advisors. So there will be a pre-major advisor, and as soon as they declare their major, they'll get a major advisor. If someone's transferring in as a junior, that will happen very quickly at the beginning of the fall semester. And for sophomores, that can happen in the spring semester because the deadline to declare a major at Barnard is March 1st. Until that time, until pre-major advisors are assigned, students have been working with their class deans. So sophomores and some juniors, but most of the sophomores have been working with me as the sophomore class dean. And then my colleague, Dean Erica Siegel, who's the junior class dean, has been working with juniors over the summer and serving as the advisors for students coming in as they were working towards that first registration period that they had at the end of July. Next slide, please. Thanks. So the resources that we have, first of all, there's me, the Associate Dean for Transfer Students. And then I'm really kind of proud of this little group. It's 11 students. We call them the Transfer Student Advisory Board, which is a mouthful. So we just call them TSABs. This is 11 students who are transfer students who applied, went through interview process, and are really excited to be working with new transfer students to help them with their transition, to help them, to give them the student perspective. I mean, they can get the advisor dean perspective, but it's great to have an actual student to talk with from the very beginning. And so they've been working with their TSABs probably since the end of June. Each TSAB has about 15 students that they work with. And and they have been reaching out and having Zoom meetings. They've been, texting, however, is the best way to get in touch. And so I guess the reason we have all these resources, these human resources, is that what we're really working with, what's at the core of our approach for working with transfer students is coming from this sense of belonging. We know that students have already been to college. They kind of know the deal. They don't know Barnard, but they have been through a year. And so we want them as quickly as possible to feel as though they belong. We really want them to feel supported. And we really want them to know that there are people here who are just willing and able to answer questions when they have them. We also have a fall transfer community Canvas site, and that's a one-stop shop for every email, every video, every session that we've given. We just upload to this Canvas site. So if someone's missed something or they can't remember, they don't have to search through their emails. They can just go in and find it on this Canvas site. We also have an email address, transferadvising@barnard.edu, and there are several people monitoring that email. So I'm on there as well, but sometimes it's quicker for students to email that address if they need a really fast answer. And then there's the new student orientation, which is NSOP. And at that, we will have a special transfer panel on Friday afternoon. There will be on Thursday and Friday, there will be dedicated lunch space so transfer students can find each other and they can know who they are. And then we'll have a couple of neighborhood walking tours, one on Saturday and one on Sunday, and those will be led by the TSABs. TSABs will be on the transfer panel, and they will also be at the transfer community lunches, and I will be at the panel and also at the lunches. Next slide, please. So what to expect? You have, transfer students have the continued support of the transfer team, and that is myself, the Transfer Student Advisory Board. There are administrative assistants in the office, Dean Siegel. So we're all here to support transfer students throughout the year. So it doesn't just stop after the summer. We will have a transfer community event in week 3. Last year, we had something that was a milk and cookie event we weren't so sure about, but it was well attended and students really appreciated it. It was a chance to come together again after NSOP. That TSABs will be running transfer study rooms throughout the semester, and this will be an opportunity once or twice a week for transfer students to come together, to study together, to connect with an older transfer student if they have questions. And then there'll be faculty support. Faculty are very aware of our transfer students. They want to know who they are, and they understand, particularly with junior transfers, that they're trying to get into classes that they really need for their majors. So we encourage students to let faculty know that they are incoming transfer students. The other thing I can promise that there will be excellent communication from our end, but we also expect our students to be communicating with us. So we really rely on this two-way communication with students. We know a lot, but we don't read minds. And so once we know that a student is struggling or has a question or whatever, we try our best to deal with that question, to answer it as quickly as possible. And I think that's it for now. I'm going to pass the slide deck to Rebecca Syme Nagasawa, who is the director for the Center for Accessibility Resources and Disability Services, otherwise known as CARDS.
Thank you, Mary. And it is a mouthful. So we are known as the CARDS, but what we really are is the Disability Service Office at Barnard. And so welcome, everybody. We're very thankful that you're here with us tonight. I know we've gotten a lot of information, so I'll try to be concise but clear. So our office is our mission is really to be the focal point or meeting the needs of community members with disabilities, and that includes students. What we do is we provide academic, dining, housing, and physical access accommodations to Barnard students with disabilities in compliance with the ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. That is kind of the floor of what we do, is to make sure that students have accommodations. We also view our role as creating a sense of belonging, as Mary mentioned, for students with disabilities within our community. So for students with disabilities, some of your students may have already been in touch with us because they were requesting housing accommodations. One of the only accommodation requests that really has a deadline are housing accommodations, and those are so that we can meet those needs within the housing assignment process. So you might have already been in touch with us, your student may have already been in touch with us, they might already be registered with us. But for students who are seeking academic accommodations, that can kind of happen at any point in their college career. So they're welcome to get in touch with us at any point when they're starting this semester. It's really only housing accommodations that we have those deadlines for. So registering with cards is very easy. It's a 3-step process. There is an online new student application that allows us to gather some information about your student, and that can be found on our website. You do need to provide, students do need to provide supporting documentation from their either physician or a mental health professional. There are some documentation guidelines on our website, but in general, what we're looking for is for your provider to give us some information about something like diagnosis, functional limitations, meaning what are some of the barriers that you might experience in your educational environment. And again, that could include housing, that could include dining, that could include your physical access environment, but it could also include your academic environment or what's happening in the classroom. And then some recommended accommodations in that documentation. And then you will also schedule and attend an intake appointment with the CARDS coordinator for your class year. You heard a little bit about how the class deans are kind of specialists in each developmental stage of for students, first year or sophomore or junior or senior. For cards, we do it a little bit differently. So we have a class year case management model. So students are able to, once they register with us, they have a cards coordinator who is their coordinator throughout their entire time at Barnard. And for disability purposes, we feel like that's pretty effective because it allows us to really get to know students, understand their situation, and it helps that students don't have to kind of re-explain that information each year. So the first year cards coordinator that some of your students may have already met is our accommodations coordinator, Nikki Roderman. She is for the class of 2028. We are currently in the process of hiring a class of 2027 cards coordinator. So myself and our associate director, Caitlin McGuire, are currently serving as cards coordinator for the class of 2027. And then Caitlin, our associate director, is also the cards coordinator for class of 2026. And I am the coordinator for class of 2025. Some other things that to be aware of in terms of interacting with our office, not only do we provide accommodations for students who have permanent disabilities that are maybe have some experience with receiving accommodations in the K-12 environment, but we also provide accommodations for students with temporary disabilities. Every single year, we always have a handful of students that unfortunately experience things like concussion or a broken ankle or a sprain or potentially a sports injury. We can work with those students to get physical access accommodations, to communicate with their faculty if they're needing some absences or some extensions on assignments. The process to register for temporary accommodations is exactly the same as the process to register for permanent accommodations. In general, if a student experiences a concussion or an injury, we will respond pretty quickly and get accommodations set up for that student. But the basic process of submitting an application, providing documentation, even if it is like an outpatient visit or information from our primary care health service about a concussion, or from, for example, CU athletics for a sports injury, and then meeting briefly with a coordinator to make sure that the accommodations are appropriate for whatever students might need. You're welcome to visit our website, which is on this contact information. And the easiest way to get in touch with us is to email cards@barnard.edu. Each student, as I mentioned, who registers with us will have a dedicated cards coordinator. They'll also have their contact information, but it's easiest to really, if you have a question, if you want to walk through the registration process, if you're interested in what we do, if you need more information about how to get documentation, you can just email cards@barnard.edu and we'll be happy to reply. And I think I'm going to pass it back to Caitlin for our Q&A.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And I'm going to invite all of our panelists to turn on their video and join for the Q&A. For folks who are listening, please feel free to continue to put your questions in the chat. We've gotten some, but we're happy to answer more. I'll start by saying that I know you all will play a part during orientation, but you will also kind of continue to share information out with students throughout their first year and throughout their time at the college. Can you talk a little bit about what those touch points look like, how students hear from you, how you engage with them, and also just how they can find you? I'll let whoever wants to start. Go ahead, Wendy.
You mentioned first year, so I'll start. So I think one of the questions in the chat also was, will the first year account continue to work throughout the year? And yes. Well, it was probably the first email we introduced students to, and we hope that if nothing else, they remember that one because it's the easiest way to reach the first year team and myself. Again, we maintain a public calendar and that's fine, but they can also just email there and be helped with an appointment as needed. And so a lot of our outreach happens either in the blogs that we ask them to subscribe to, because there we will have like deadline information, upcoming information, sometimes new classes open up, things like that. So we try to always direct them to the blog. But if there's something that we really need them to set eyes on, we'll also usually combine that with a targeted email, right? So we'll send it to a particular class or subset of students that would need that information. Now, the nature of the information, again, could be anything. It could be deadlines. It could be something new that's changing or happening. It could be we want them to be aware of certain activities. I don't know, maybe someone else wants to talk about 411, which is another form of communication that we have, but is for all the class years. But it's either all in the email or all in the blogs. It's written communication, and then there's some Instagram accounts that students can also subscribe to. Those are the main ways.
I'll talk about the 411 since you mentioned it, Dean Bry. So the 411 is a weekly newsletter that comes out. It goes to each class year, and each class dean will provide a letter to the students each week, kind of giving them timely reminders, events that are coming up, things to think about. And it's a good way to keep in touch with the class and encourage them to come and see the class dean. There will also be happenings from other offices below that dean's letter. So it's a really good way for students to know what's going on in the community each week. Dean Larita, is there anything that you would add in terms of touch points?
Yes, just thanks, Dean Tedder. Just to say about the class blogs, every class dean does have a blog, and it's targeted towards that class. And so, for example, the sophomore class blog is different from the first year and also the junior. So it's really important to really look at the 411s. Can't say enough about that, and look at the class blogs. And I think those are the main points. The other thing is to know that always we are happy to meet with students. And so students can always put themselves on our calendars, and also reach out to dos@barnard.edu. If they're having trouble, they look at the calendars, they look full. I mean, they should absolutely reach out, and somebody will be able to see them.
I'll have one other thing that I'll add in terms of touch points. I think for a lot of families in particular, it's helpful to kind of know that there is a process if your student is having any academic challenges that they might be experiencing in their first year. And that can happen being in a new school, in a new environment, or trying a class that they've never tried before. So there is something that exists, which is an academic concern notice. So if a faculty has any concern about a student's attendance, about their grades, they can reach out, submit that notice, and then that prompts their class dean to call the student in and have a conversation that is really not about, being in trouble or anything like that. It really is just an opportunity for us to check in, see how they're doing, see if there's any support that they might need, and to do that in a really quick and timely way so that, then the student is hopefully set on the right path with the class. So that's hopefully reassuring to families knowing that that process exists as well.
If I may add one more thing I thought of is there will be additional touch points from pre-major advisors. So as the school year starts, the students will hear from their pre-major advisor asking for that first meeting to get to know them, to review schedules, but also a follow-up meeting to finalize things and lock everything in. And then they can expect to have more of those meetings later in the term in November when we do another round of registration for spring. But the one thing I want to stress is that they could be in touch with their pre-major advisor at any time. They are not limited to those expected times of the year. They really could be in touch at any point as needed.
And as long as we're adding on, I'm going to add one more thing here, and that is when students declare departments. So there's departmental programming meetings, and particularly around October, we'll be having a majors fair, and there'll be lots of program meetings throughout the fall. So there'll be outreach from departments as well.
Dean Garay, thinking about the pre-major advisors, we know that students are matched with them at the end of August, especially for the families in attendance who haven't been privy to kind of all of the emails and all of the information. Can you share more about the advising and the support that's been available to students throughout the summer, especially, leading up to the first registration period?
Sure, absolutely. So throughout the summer, students were introduced to the first year team and the first year dean's office through a guide. So they've been receiving chapters of the first year guide. Initially, it was bi-weekly. Now we've moved on to weekly because we're getting close to the end of summer. And each of those chapter guides, or guide chapters, I should say, were they contain information that we wanted the class to focus on for that period of time. So for those 2 weeks. One of them had to do with their first year questionnaire. One of them had to do, which was the questionnaire had to do with selecting their advisor. Tell us more about yourself so that we can think about your interests and your needs as we match you up to an advisor. There were other questionnaires that had to do or helping them make decisions about first year seminar, first year writing courses, which are the required courses for first year. The chapters, again, have tried to cover things that were important for the time frame. There were guides helping them to prep for registration and those sorts of things. So that was more of the written information. And then, of course, we had the blog running the entire time because we want to start getting them used to going to the blog, and also an Instagram account that our peer student workers really do a great job at keeping updated. But in addition to that, there was a lot of virtual communication we had small group sessions for the class that were required around getting ready for registration. So those were led by myself, and then we would break out into small groups at the end of those sessions. And these small groups would then tackle Q&A around registration. We also hosted the departments so that students could learn the specifics of what the departments wanted or needed students to know about registering in their first year, or to be aware of for the first year. There were walk-in hours every week for students who had pointed questions. There were what they called Instagram takeovers, where students could then, rapid fire questions to our students. So there's been numerous ways in which we've tried to keep them informed and keep them up to date. One of the biggest lifts this summer was we did engage faculty heavily this summer to provide one-on-one appointments for students the week before registration. So in addition to everything I shared, deans and faculty, collaborated to offer hundreds of appointments leading up to registration in the hopes that any students who still had questions or concerns or anything they wanted to review with a faculty member or a dean had the opportunity to do so. And we continued that through registration week in addition to walk-in hours and things like that.
Thank you so much. And one more question, I think primarily for you, as folks are looking towards the fall registration period. When will students have the opportunity to register for additional classes if they need to do so? And how can they prepare for this ahead of time?
Sure. So the next registration cycle will be during NSOP. It'll be the Friday of NSOP, which is the new student orientation program, August 30th, and that continues into the 31st. At that point, students have already been through a full registration cycle. What's different is they will gain access to all of Barnard's courses and all of the Columbia courses, which is different because in July they were working with a curated list of courses. So that's usually the most exciting part of August registration, is just gaining access to all the classes across the schools. There will be more faculty advising available leading up to the registration cycle. Now, they don't have this information just yet because we actually just locked in all these dates with our faculty, but they can expect to have opportunities the week before NSOP. There will be virtual advising with faculty the Monday before NSOP as well. And then there will be in-person and virtual opportunities during NSOP to have advising with faculty. So this is hot off the presses. Again, students will get this information shortly. Holly, I hope I got that all right because you were in that meeting with me yesterday. But
That is right. And then there are a couple questions, Dean Garay, I'm hoping you can speak to when students will be informed about their pre-major advisor. So there are these orientation advisors who are available right before and during NSOP, and those are faculty, as you said. But then when do students get handed over to their pre-major advisor?
Sure. So some of our faculty are available in the summer, which these are the faculty I referenced so far, but all of our faculty come back on campus with our students, right? So our students should expect to learn the name of their advisor actually the Wednesday that they move in. And they'll get their advisor match. And their advisor has their own set of instructions that ask them to please be in touch by the first day of class to set the appointment, their initial appointment. So generally speaking, how that plays out is the advisor will reach out, they'll set an appointment, and they'll meet during the first week to go over everything that's been done until that point. And then they'll have another appointment the following week or sooner, depending on what's needed, just to iron out any kinks, to finalize everything, and to make the schedule final. Beyond the second week of classes, you can't add more courses. So that's what they're hoping to do, is get everything solidified to then be done with adding and changes and move forward. And that's really the timeline for that. But before that, the faculty that are available, again, are long-term faculty that are really, really experienced with advising and hopefully very helpful to our students leading up to the start of classes.
There is one point of clarification. There is a distinction to be made between the next round of registration for first years and the next round of registration for transfers. So for first years, the next registration opportunity is Friday, August 30th. Whereas for transfers, it is starting August 20th, which I believe is a Tuesday, although don't quote me on that. I'm looking at my calendar to make sure that I have that right. Is that correct, Dean Larita? It's a Tuesday.
Yes.
Great. So next Tuesday in a week, transfers also will have a registration opportunity.
Great, thank you, everyone. Rebecca, we had a couple of questions come in for cards. So one person was asking if cards can help with referrals to physical therapy places. And then another question was asking about, kind of if they're not sure that their condition would qualify for cards, what is the process?
Sure. So in terms of referral for local care, we get that question a lot. And what we typically do is actually work with our primary care health services. Because they have providers on staff and they have connections with those providers. And also they are the experts in either the student health insurance that might cover those visits or in helping a family navigate whether they're staying on their own insurance, which providers might be appropriate. So a student can always, if they're registered with us and they have a question about, hey, I need local care, whether it's mental health care, physical health care, physical therapy, things like that, they can go to their cards coordinator and their cards coordinator will help facilitate that conversation with PCHS and get them to the person that can help them figure out local referral. We do that with Furman Counseling Center as well. If a student is looking for local longer term for the 4 years they're in college care, we will help kind of broker a conversation with Furman so that Furman can help students navigate a local provider that would be, accepting of their either student health insurance or whatever health insurance the student's bringing to campus. And then for the second question about the diagnosis question, what I would recommend is essentially the same thing. I would say have a conversation with the cards coordinator for your class year. We are more than welcome to do that. I was remiss in mentioning Dean Garay mentioned their You Can Book Me. Cards has Calendly links on our website. So students can always, one of the options for those Calendly links is an information consultation appointment. All cards coordinators have a 30-minute appointment that's available for that. If you have questions about your particular situation and whether or not it would be related, accommodations related, or if there are other resources on campus, you can always make a quick 30-minute appointment with the cards coordinator for your class year, and they can help you navigate through either what might serve as documentation or have other suggestions for resources on campus.
Thank you so much. And someone had asked where to find the You Can Book Me links for the Dean's Office. I'll share, I know there's a helpful page on the Dean's Office website that it lists all of the class deans and all of the staff, and there's links to the You Can Book Me for each person on that page. So you could just Google Barnard Dean's Office staff, and that'll pull that right up for you. We'll also be sharing the recording and these slide decks around, so I'll make sure that the link to that page is included in the slide deck. And the same thing for the Calendly for cards as well. We've had a couple of questions come in, Dean Tedder, about campus access as it pertains to Columbia in particular. We know that Barnard students are taking Columbia classes and vice versa. Can you talk about how restrictions on campus access impact our students?
Absolutely. So some of you may have read that Columbia is moving to a system where there may be some restrictions on campus depending on whatever they have in place for safety. And those the current restriction is for both Columbia and Barnard ID holders. So our students are able to access Barnard's campus and Columbia's campus at this time. And so we don't anticipate further restrictions beyond that. But if that were to happen, we would certainly work with our colleagues at Columbia with faculty to make sure that students still can engage with their coursework.
Perfect, thank you. I also want to ask a question about choosing your major. I know a lot of our students may come in with an idea of what they want to study. Some may come in completely undecided, and that might certainly change for anyone as well. Can you talk a little bit about how students go about choosing their major, and especially for the first years in first-year families, how they might choose their academics for the first couple of semesters to help them figure that piece out?
Sure. So this is a conversation I have often. I have some students who come in knowing or having a strong sense of what they would like to major in. And generally speaking, you know, they have some requirements that they're required to work through. They need to do their seminar, their writing, their physical education requirement in the first year. And they also have a foundations curriculum that they're trying to work through. When it is available or when the department recommends it, we usually will suggest an introductory course in the area of interest. And if they're able to do that in the first semester, that's great. Usually within the first year, just to make sure that things are what they thought they would be. That's usually what a student will do if they're a little bit more decided on their major, or they might take electives in the area of interest as well. But I have plenty of students that are undecided and unsure, or maybe are torn between areas of interest. And so thankfully, our curriculum is such that there is room for students to really explore their interests. So outside of those 3 requirements I mentioned, the foundations curriculum can really be satisfied throughout the 4 years. It's not you must do this in your first year, your second year situation. And so students really should feel comfortable and give themselves permission to, in addition to trying to work some of the required coursework, to also really explore the areas that they're being pulled towards. They will not fall behind if they don't know their major in the first year. They will not be in any way set back if they are using, again, those first 2 semesters to really sort of decide between areas or determine if they have interest in new areas, right? So so I try to just remind the class over and over, if they're decided, it's perfectly fine to get started, but if you're still seeking or torn, give yourself the opportunity to explore. And there's a reason why we declare majors in the second year, and it's to make sure that everyone's feeling really good about the choice they're about to make. So
I just like to add, as the sophomore class dean, that I also have lots and lots of conversations about declaring a major, particularly in the fall and even into the spring. So it's not uncommon. And we do have the majors fair for people who are still undecided. But again, as Dean Garay said, you really don't have to know in your first year. And in fact, you don't have to declare until your second semester of your sophomore year.
Thank you. So I will quickly answer 2 of the questions. So someone asked if we have an office for fellowships like Rhodes and Fulbright. That will be through Beyond Barnard, who will be presenting next Tuesday at our Getting Involved on Campus conversation. So I encourage you to join that conversation and to watch the recording afterwards. You can also, if you look at their website, there's lots of great information about fellowships there. And then someone asked also how we sign up for the 411 newsletter. So the 411 newsletter is going to automatically be sent to all students in a given class year. So there's no need to sign up. It'll appear right in their inboxes. We have a question about double majors and if folks can choose also to add minors, and how common this is, and you know what that experience is like at Barnard. Dean Larry, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I guess I'm going to say it just depends, and what students want. So there are a lot of students who double major. They may start as a double major. They may do 2 majors and then try to combine their senior thesis. They might start to do a minor. They may finish that minor. We really don't declare the minor until it's basically done. So I found coming here that declaring majors and minors is quite flexible at Barnard, and that really, you really do need just one major. I mean, double majors are good if someone really has a passion for two things, but often sticking to a single major really allows you to go in deeply into the content of that major. So it really depends once you're in it, how that's feeling for you, you know? And as you go through the double major, let's say if you declare a double major, which is possible, whether you want to do two theses or two projects or not. So that's where your major advisors are coming in, where your class deans are coming in, and these are conversations to have while you're in process. But definitely it's all possible depending on what you want to do. And I'm just going to give a little, we do have special majors, which I'm going to, you can design your own major. I have many, many conversations about that, and we encourage it if it's the right thing to do. And we encourage students to really think about what it is they want to do, where they want to end up, why they're doing it. And sometimes it turns out to be just the right thing. And sometimes it turns out to be, hey, you know what? I should really do a major and a minor, or, two majors with a combined thesis or something like that. So it's all about finding out what works best for the student, and what they really want to achieve by the time they graduate. And these are ongoing conversations, and we're all more than happy to participate in them as needed.
Thank you. I'll ask one final question for the group, as I know we're getting to the close of our time together. So students have a lot of anticipation and excitement about coming to Barnard, whether it's their first semester or they're a transfer student. But adjusting to college life can also be stressful. There can be challenges and bumps in the road. Can you talk to those a little bit? What bumps might students anticipate? How can they best meet those challenges? And also, do you have any advice for the families who are attending on how they can best support their students through that process?
So one bump that immediately comes to mind is, I think, there's the desire to maybe compare and contrast schedules, and that's a bad idea because everyone's goals are different and everyone's journey is different. And so to the extent that I can encourage our students to really think about what they're hoping to accomplish this semester and what feels right to them. Again, we have minimum requirements and maximum limits for a reason, right? We want everyone to take a balanced course load and to have time to do well in their classes. And so what I see with first years is a desire to take perhaps more courses than we recommend in that very first semester or first year. And then a lot of follow-up conversations a few weeks later about like, how do I think this through again, because I'm overloaded and overwhelmed, right? And so thankfully we have a pretty generous drop deadline that allows us to have these conversations with students and make adjustments. But 4 classes can feel quite different, or be just as challenging as 5 classes, because it all depends on what the material is. Some courses are 4 credits, so a student in 4 credit courses is working just as hard as someone in 5 3-credit classes. So don't compare your schedules too much. Think a lot in those first 2 weeks during the shopping period about how the balance feels. How are you getting a lunch in? Are you getting enough sleep? Do you have enough hours to study? If you needed some outside support like tutoring or writing fellows, do you have time to go, or are you overextended? Because part of doing well in your classes is being able to access all those amazing resources we talked about. And if you don't build that time in, you won't be able to. So less can be more in your first semester.
I think that's exactly what I would say as well. And I think the other thing too is, the being in a new environment, even if you've been in college before, there's a transition period, right? Maybe you know a few people, but you don't know a lot of people, or maybe you don't know anyone. And so really like having the time to make friendships, to get involved in clubs and organizations, to be able to have time to study, all of that is so important. And I really can't emphasize trying to go to bed at a decent hour. I know that that can be difficult for college students, but really trying to prioritize, sleep and rest and eating well, all of that really helps make that transition that much easier. And also call your family. You don't have to do it every day. You can if you want to, but really maintain your ties to home as well as you're meeting people, and it can help with some of the homesickness that you might feel.
I guess I have something very quick to say. I know we're at time. Just don't sit in anxiety and unknowing. Reach out and ask. We're here for you.
I love that. Thank you so much, Team Larita, and thank all of you for being here and for sharing all of this information and insights. I know it's really helpful. And thank you to everyone who's attended, our students and their family members. It's been great to have you along with us. I know we weren't able to get to quite all of the questions that were submitted, so if you are still seeking information now or at any point, please feel free to reach out to me at parents@barnard.edu. I'm happy to answer your question if I can, or to pass you to the right office or seek out the right person or information for you. I hope you'll join us for our upcoming sessions. So on Thursday, we'll be discussing movement and orientation. And then next week, our final session will be about getting involved on campus. As you may know, we'll have recordings available for each of these sessions. We'll be sending along the slide decks as well. So you'll be able to get the helpful links that are included here. Thank you again for joining us, everyone, and have a great night.